Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp.
Yes, it is. It is time for hemp. Thank you for tuning in to the big broadcast today. I am your host, Casper Leitch, and you are listening to a program that is focused about how wonderful cannabis hemp is. And while I'm thinking about it, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, we ask that you hit your pipes, your bongs, your vaporizers, and take time for hemp. We got all kinds of great content you can find at our website. It's timeforhemp.news. And if you go there, you'll find free downloads, free videos, lots of free music to enjoy and add to your playlist and share with your friends. And we ask that you do visit our website often. We got free videos you can take with you and free audio and an archive that is about 30 years big. And as I said, anytime you hear the word joint is one of the times you're going to hear it when I talk about my wonderful joint host. Speaking of joint host, I got a groovy joint host up in Canada who's busy trying to educate the world about how important cannabis hemp is to his powerful radio network. Al Graham. Hey, Al.
Hey, Casper. How you doing?
Pretty groovy. How be you?
Doing good. It's nice up here right now. I can just tell you that. We're smoking our cannabis, walking down the streets, and we're not having any problems whatsoever.
Well,
but
you do have a great radio network out there with all kinds of great content. Why don't you let our audience know a bit about it?
All right. The Pace Radio Network, you can find it at paceradio.net. We do things in audio as well as video. And we have programming that is released every day of the week, as well as you can catch Time for Hemp Friday mornings at 10 o'clock.
Nice. And we appreciate you doing all the work you do up there because of you. So many people in Canada have learned how important it is to take Time for Hemp. And speaking of people who've done a lot of important work to raise the message of the importance of this plant, we got another great joint host on the program who's in the southern part of the United States, Al Byrne. He's written a groovy book called For Country and Cannabis that you should pick up. Right, Al?
Yep, that's me. Al Byrne wrote the book. It's a historical and informative 360 pages. It's available anywhere you buy books, Amazon, anything online. They've got it, and I recommend it. And one of the reasons is that I tried, to the best of my knowledge, it's a 40-year span of history in there, to remember people that were significant with the medical cannabis issue, either in a positive way or a negative way. If they were bad people or did bad things, I outed them, If they were heroes and heroines and totally forgotten, I outed them too. We don't want them forgotten. And in the book is right near the end, because it's a span. The guests we have today they get a page or two. These guys are the heart and soul of the Veterans Action Council. And I will let them explain all of that. But we have two guests. We have Etienne Fontan, who is originally a Louisiana guy. I think we could get away with saying the Louisiana folk. And then my other guest here, our guest, is a longtime cohort of mine. We did, on Time for Hemp, we did 6-7 years of an interview program called Veterans Voices, Mike Krawitz.
Good day, guys. How you doing?
Gentlemen.
Welcome,
Good to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So look, for the audience, we're going to talk about a few things. I would like you guys to explain VAC. What is it? And all that.
Happy to.
Yeah, but one of the subjects we want to go pretty quick is these two gentlemen have just come back from Vienna, and I'll let them tell you about the trip. But it was all about working with the United Nations on behalf of veterans to get some of this cannabis stuff regulated on a national, international level. So they just act within a month or so. So whatever we get there is going to be right up front. So I don't know. Etienne's a spokesperson for the VAC. So Etienne, here's a big moment here.
All right. Well, to give your viewers an understanding of who we are, Veterans Action Council is a nonpartisan, volunteer-led policy and advocacy body focused on improving the health outcomes and access to care for U.S. military veterans. We're comprised of combat veterans and experienced policy advocates. The VAC engages constructively with regulators, lawmakers, and international institutions to provide grounded, real-world insight into how public health and drug policy decisions affect veterans. We kind of work at the intersection of veterans affairs, public health, evidence-based regulation, including responsible approaches to plant-based and integrative therapies. And we're active at the local, national, and international levels. And we serve as a trusted stakeholder voice committed to transparency, scientific integrity, and collaborative policy making that strengthens both veteran care as well as public trust.
Wow.
So we did just come back from Vienna, Austria. We spent a week there for the Commission on Narcotics and Drugs, which meets in March. And that's where all of the policymakers who deal in drug policy come from around the world. So we were standing with very much our brothers and sisters from most continents were represented. At this point, I'm going to defer to our senior diplomat and our ambassador at the because we're also part of the Cannabis Embassy, Michael and I, the Veterans Action Council. We fall under an international group due to our friends in Europe that we helped create last year. So Michael Krawitz has been at the UN since 1997, and especially in Vienna since 2008. So he can tell you what our mission is specifically and why we're doing what we're doing. Thank you for letting us be here.
Yeah, guys, it's great to see y'all. Etienne gave a great intro. My brain is flooded with places to go and things to say about all this. But I think it's important to get grounded in kind of the big picture. And from the United States perspective, especially, why does this matter at all? Why are we going to the United Nations to talk about cannabis? To a great extent, the United States has been an island when it comes to cannabis policy. Our Schedule I status of cannabis doesn't line up with anything in the world, doesn't line up with the treaties, doesn't line up with any law in the entire earth. The only country on earth that has, as a matter of law, a statement that says cannabis has no medical value. So while that thing sinks in for a second, let me say, I think the person that really captured the essence of this whole crazy mess the best was Lennis Wirth, our colleague from Virginia, who said that she went to the local town council and she talked about changing the cannabis policy. And they said, well, we can't do anything because we're constrained by what happens in the county. So she went to the county and they said, well, we can't do anything outside of what the state does, certainly. So she went to the state and talked to the state legislators, and they said, "Oh, our hands are tied by federal laws, federal supremacy clause. We can't do anything if it's outside of what the federal law states." And then, if you are a student of history, you know that we've been, including Al, myself, and Etienne, in federal court many times, actually prevailing over the United States federal government, where they then overrule us, because they then pull out the treaty out of their back pocket and say, we can't do anything at the federal level because we're constrained by our treaty obligations. And the treaty obligations are wrapped up in our Constitution, and they trump your little state laws and your reform arguments and your facts, all the evidence. And that's exactly where we are. We've been overruled several times. But what we found, to my surprise, and I'll give you a little insight. And when I started back in 1998, I started with, what I think Casper and I might call his name just jumped out of my head. The godfather of marijuana, Harry Anslinger. I had sort of Harry Anslinger's perspective in my brain. And I'll tell you what I was thinking. What I was thinking in 1998 was that we were going to legalize cannabis in the United States at the federal level. And then we were then, as the powerful United States on drug policy, going to go then and change the world drug policy at the UN. I actually went to the UN with that mental picture, thinking, well, maybe decades later, when our children's children are working on this stuff, we might actually, succeed in doing that. And then, at that point would be a terrible time to have to try to figure out how to get in the UN. I thought maybe if we get used to the place and we learn a little bit about it, we can actually speed that process along and create some institutional knowledge in our cannabis space about what the UN, how the UN fits into that bigger reform picture. But what I found as working at the UN from 2009 to 2020 was that was completely wrong mental picture. That in fact, we could actually harness the energy of the world that was actually being held back by the United States, because the United States was, basically pushing around the whole world on drug policy and stopping a lot of countries from doing what they wanted to do on drug policy. And we took advantage of some of that zeitgeist and actually working with those facts and evidence, we got the World Health Organization to support our position, and we changed the treaty in 2020. So now coming back from the United Nations, undermining the DEA with their strongest argument at the highest level, all sort of invisible from the ground level, in the cannabis movement. That's what we've just done. So this talk about CBD access, and this talk about cannabis rescheduling, and this talk about pharmaceutical access to cannabis, all that, it all fits into that picture.
I'd like to ask for a minute here, Michael. How is Lilith? I haven't heard from her in quite a while, and she was quite a ball of love and a wonderful spirit. Is she still with us?
She's not only still with us, she took on a special project in Virginia a while back. She saw a great promise in a lady who used to be in the CIA, a state rep named Abigail Spanberger. Now Abigail Spanberger is known as Her Excellency, the Governor of Virginia. And she will, and I'm sure in good time, sign the cannabis legislation that just hit her desk, which the previous governor held off for the last 4 years as sort of a Republican hardline.
Well, we'll have to get her on the show sometime, because she was just a hardworking activist and an inspiration to a good many people. And either one of you can answer this. What I find to be true as a cannabis activist, we have a lot of work to do. We are busy. We have a lot of mundane things that we go through. But on the upside, you guys were in Vienna. You were overseas. You were able to go in and out of coffee shops, meet people who are in the business over there, I hope. And you had the opportunity to see a lot of different aspects of the cannabis hemp movement from different perspectives, from being in different countries, and meet so many wonderful people. Anything you want to bring back to our audience from your trip to Vienna that was a standout moment?
Well, there were many moments. One reason we're there is because we're continuously building coalitions, right? Being in the international circle, we found that a lot of activists like us who have changed things in their countries, like us, are working, have stepped outside of their comfort zone and are working at the international level to really bring about the change that we want to see, because it's not just the United States getting hit over the head with the treaty. Every country is as well. So one of the reasons we had a special situation this year is that we lost one of our members, Wade Laughter. And Wade Laughter was very special to us. And he created a particular genetic, a CBD-rich genetic, with other people called Harlequin. And that medicine helped and saved many people's lives. So upon his passing, Michael and I kind of dreamed up bringing his widow, and then bringing other people to give testimonial on what this cannabis medicines did and does. And needless to say, we had what's called a side event. And a side event at the UN is a UN sanctioned and approved event where they basically give you a room, a mic, and allow you to go. And we were very fortunate that our friends at Puffco donated to the Veterans Action Council this year, which helped us afford to send our guests to Vienna. And it was a blessing to have them, because our side event, which I posted in the chat there, which is on our YouTube, which is our Veterans Action Council, and it's the CBD Rich Cannabis Policy and Patient Experience. This was organized by the Veterans Action Council, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, with the support of the DRCnet Foundation, the European Coalition for Just and Effective Drug Policies, also known as NCOD, our friends from South Africa at Fields of Green for All, NPC, the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, and the Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. So those were our sponsors of our event, who showed out and showed up. And our event was on a Friday, which is usually a dead day at the UN. Everybody does most things Monday through Thursday. So Michael asked how many people are going to show up at our event. I said, probably 5 of us, and we'll all be on the dais. And I was totally wrong. The room was filled. Not only was it filled, they had representatives from Jazz Pharmaceutical in the room, SSDP, LEAP, and various other organizations who were our sponsors and supporters were all there, as well as others. And Monica gave a wonderful speech on the work that she and Wade had done over the decades. And then Forrest Lee gave a presentation that basically he is the parent of a child whose son had over 1,000 epileptic episodes a day.
Oh, jeepers.
Due to Harlequin and the medicines, was able to stop that. So not only did his medications that they worked on help with that, they also went on to work on another condition, which is they're known as butterfly children. They're basically the skin, the epidermis does not stick to the body. It basically sloughs off and peels off and bruises when even touched. And the ointment that Forrest and had created basically caused their skin to rebind. And so he had video and pictures showing the before and after. And ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you there was not a dry eye in the house, Jazz Pharmaceutical and everybody were all in tears. That's how intense a presentation. He gave a solid half-hour presentation. But the next part, we kind of made an announcement to the world, whereas we were made aware by a friend of ours, Dr. Pavel Pakta. Dr. Pavel Pakta is out of the Czech Republic and one of the foremost experts, policy experts on cannabis at the international level. He was part of the International Narcotics Control Board. They kind of do the oversight of what the treaty implements. And so he made us aware via a LinkedIn post a few months ago about a new interpretive reading done by the INCB. And Michael, I will let you take it over from here. I don't want to dominate the time, but Dr. Pavel Pakta basically made us aware that there's a change and a complete change in international law in CBD. Michael Krawitz.
Nice.
Yeah, this is something that's one of these things that happens along the way. Like, we were working on, UN treaty stuff, never expected to have a detour to Geneva, Switzerland to work for a few years inside the World Health Organization, right? Just, you don't expect it to happen. But here we are, we're working on this side event, and we're dutifully trying to present Wade's story. And the reason I thought it would be relevant was because they're always talking about CBD at the UN, but none of them, when I say them, none of the countries around the world really seem to have any experience in delivering CBD-based medicine, cannabis, CBD-rich cannabis products. And I thought, this would be a win-win. And I think, judging by the size of the attendance in the room, as Etienne was pointing out, I'd say that it was found very interesting. And don't understate the emotional impact of this presentation. Etienne said there wasn't a dry eye in the house. That was very unusual for a UN meeting. These are usually, these are the kind of meetings that you could play for your little child to fall asleep with at night. But anyway.
Well, and people at the UN have seen so much.
Absolutely.
Tragedy, they've seen so much heartbreak that to be moved by a story like that, is very, very telling.
So as we're working on this project, we read some notes that Dr. Pablo Pacta, he was actually a member of the International Narcotics Control Board up until last year. Previous to that, he was formerly, excuse me, the secretary of the INCB, the International Narcotics Control Board, years ago. So this is actually, in other words, he's very well connected to this International Narcotics Control Board. He knows them very well, knows the ins and outs of it very well. He was a participant and an active member of it right up to last year. And he said that there was not one but two different places where the International Narcotics Control Board has quietly reinterpreted the treaty. Now, it's not their job to interpret the treaty, really. It's not like their day job, but their position, you got to understand, the International Narcotics Control Board has this position inside the UN where they're sort of the communication between the UN Drugs Control Program and these countries. When I say these countries, I'm talking about 186 countries. Picture the president of the International Narcotics Control Board having a push button phone, and there's 186 buttons where they can just call up the president of all these countries and talk to them privately, with no notes taken on either side. And what Dr. Pacta was telling us was that they had not once but twice communicated privately to these countries and gave them new interpretation of how the treaty should be understood. And both of these new treaty interpretations favor our perspective that we've actually had published in the past. A friend of ours, Kenzie Riboulet-Zamouli, he's in Barcelona, published a paper called High Compliance, How to Legalize Cannabis in Compliance with the Drug Control Treaties. That's not even my main work. It's just a side thing, really, to look at legalization or adult rec access. But I find it fascinating. And the treaty has never opposed it. It can be done by countries as an exempt product if the interpretation of the treaty is broad enough to allow countries the latitude to make these decisions on their own. And guess what the INCB just did? They just told countries that they have the latitude to make these decisions on their own. They said that CBD is not of any concern, and as a standalone product is completely devoid of their abuse potential warnings or anything that they might put on a dangerous drug substance. But yet, up until very recently, they considered CBD an extract of cannabis, literally the interpretation of the treaty. Remember, the treaty was written at a time where they didn't know anything about cannabinoids. They didn't know what THC was yet or anything. They didn't know the active ingredient cannabis. And they just, in the treaty, they talk about cannabis flowers and tops and resins and extracts of cannabis. And if you make a cannabis extract, that's CBD, it's still a cannabis extract. And INCB, up until just a couple years ago, was telling countries you should be hardline about this and consider that to be a full-on controlled substance under the treaty. And now they're telling them that they shouldn't. And on top of that, they're saying that it doesn't matter if it has a little bit of THC in it. That not only does it matter from a drug policy perspective, that it doesn't matter, it doesn't need to be controlled, but it does matter, the INCB said, in the effectiveness of the product, recognizing what we already knew, which was that THC is linked to CBD and effectiveness of the product. If you have a CBD product that's devoid of THC, it is likely to not be of much value to patients. Full stop.
Right.
And they recognized that, and then this is what they said. They said, we are now making a I can't say it either, teleological interpretation of the treaty. That is, they're trying to figure out what the treaty was meaning to do, not what it just actually said. And what it's meaning to do is protect people from, the stuff that's created in the lab, that it doesn't get out into society and kill people, bottom line. And this is just not that. The CBD seems to be an interpretation of the cannabis policy that just seems to be inappropriate. And they then, said that we're going to interpret this in terms of the teleological interpretation of the treaty, that in fact, even if it has some THC in it, the CBD product would not need to be controlled. How much THC? They said they would leave up to the member states. How would they determine how much THC is appropriate? They'd make a good faith effort to protect the public and to make that decision. Guess what Kenzie said in his paper in like 80 pages of depth?
What?
Exactly that you need to, have a good faith effort. And Kenzie even went into, some of that good faith effort might be to make sure that drug abuse education is available, that people can access drug treatment on demand, that harm reduction is implemented. I mean, that's, kind of where his brain was thinking as to what would be good faith in terms of a country's effort on cannabis.
Well, it sounds like the brain behind that thinking was pretty skilled in legalese.
Listen, guys, let me ask the so what?
Well, so what? What we just got?
So you know what I mean, Mike. So what?
Yeah.
Will the U.S. Congress give a shit?
The executive order that we just got from President Trump on CBD was written almost right out of this INCB edict.
So you guys think that they're actually paying attention after all these years?
I don't think it. Wait, all right, let me give you a history lesson of CBD. Check this out. 30-second history lesson. CBD was unscheduled in the United States. Unlike the treaty, we didn't see CBD as an extract had to be controlled. We saw it as a standalone, and it wasn't considered anything. A pure CBD product was not controlled in the United States. Then Epidiolex, with the help of parents, like Forrest and others that we talked about, actually brought that Epidiolex into the United States for trials and got it passed by the FDA. The FDA approved it. It became a FDA-approved drug. And then the FDA determined it didn't need to be scheduled based on its merits, just like the INCB. But then they asked the DEA, and they said the DEA told them, well, you got to schedule it something, because that was what the INCB was telling them at that time, that it had to be scheduled something because it could be seen as an extract of cannabis. I swear to God, you can find that exact quote somewhere in the DEA's terminology at that time as to why it needed to be scheduled. All right, this is the end of it. They scheduled it Schedule 5, right? Because it had to be scheduled somewhere because the DEA said so. That was the lowest schedule. They stuck it in 5. We passed the Farm Bill, and we changed the treaty. And both of those, again, I can send you the reference. The DEA cited both of those, the Farm Bill and the change in the treaty in the WHO position were both cited by the DEA when they suggested that it be descheduled. Most people don't know that CBD was scheduled and descheduled all outside of the Farm Bill. It's really fascinating stuff. But this executive order is the next step down that line. And each step, without us having any smoking gun on the executive order, I can tell you it just very much follows the flow. And we can give you exact verse on what the DEA said, about the scheduling and then descheduling. So yeah, we have an impact. It's weird. You wouldn't think that it would work that way.
Wow.
It's an interesting ripple too, gentlemen, because now these individual states are going to have to decide, because the UN decided they're not going to decide how much THC is in your CBD plants.
Oh, no, I think it's great.
So they're leaving it up to the states and the countries, the member states, to decide that. They're not buying the French EU seed. They're not saying 1%. They're saying a reasonable amount and within the treaty expectations. So there's some loopholes here that people are going to drive trucks through, and not just states, countries now, because it's no longer regulated. And not only that, non-psychoactive THC compounds, as far as the UN is concerned, is, they consider it, as long as it lacks abuse potential in the terms of the Single Convention Treaty, then it does not apply. So the plant doesn't need to be regulated, is basically what the UN says.
I want to give you a chance to brag. So I think, and I want to know what you think, that the letters that the VAC has sent over the last several years to the Attorney General of the United States probably had impact. Do you think that's true or not?
Oh man, we got into it, Al. We got into it with the Attorney General. The Attorney General under Joe Biden, President Biden, wouldn't answer our emails when VAC sent him emails. So we actually, and this is, again, this is totally disconnected, but you'll see just how much it helped to work at the UN level in what I'm about to say. But because we worked at the UN level and we become accustomed to having good communications with the White House, what's called the Drug Czar's office, it's the Office of National Drug Control Policy. But up until like this year, we're under Donald Trump, it's, everything's off the table. But up until this year, we've had very regular communications with that office every year. And we hadn't gotten any response. We sent those letters to the Attorney General. We sent those letters to the Attorney General. And finally, we followed up with the White House, drugs office, and said, "Hey, can you talk to the Attorney General for us, and kind of get them to tell us what's going on? We have these asks based on the treaty change that we think are reasonable to reassess cannabis policy inside the United States." Hey, why don't you finish the story from there? Etienne was part of this experience.
Well, I think it was rather fascinating that the president then came out 2 weeks later and used two of our talking points from our meeting.
Yeah, I remember that. I was like,
which kind of made us go, oh shit, I guess we had an impact. Now, we don't brag about it, gentlemen. This is, again, as Michael said, it's one of those things that kind of happened along the way. And what happened along the way was, of course, Michael and them changed the treaty in 2020. And why we went to them is for the simple fact to remind them that, hey, there was a change in the treaty. The United States basically told us that, oh, it's not a significant change to the treaty. And we're like, a change is a change is a change.
Yeah.
And that's why you now see how many countries now dealing in international medical cannabis, is because it is legal, and all they have to do is give the exact number of what they're exporting to the UN. That's all the UN wants. The UN just wants the numbers. The UN just wants the numbers to crunch them so that they know what's going on. That's it. That's all they ask for, is to please give us the number. And that's what countries like Uruguay, Portugal, and others have been doing as they're now exporting medical cannabis around the world. So we're working with our international team to make cannabis legal for adult use worldwide, so that people will no longer be executed for cannabis. Because last year and the year before that, people were being executed while we were at the UN just for discussing cannabis. For discussing cannabis, gentlemen.
Wow.
This is Singapore. And a gentleman by the name of Kevin Sabet has blood on his hands because he's the one who pushes his lies and myth information directly on the world body through his side events. And countries like China and Russia and Singapore use his language to execute people still to this day. Wow. So our international group is working toward that goal, is stopping people from being executed. And inadvertently along the way, we reminded the United States of their treaty obligation. Why? Because they beat our friends John Getman, Normal, and others after they went to change rescheduling. They said, oh, we can't because of the treaty. Well, Michael and our team saw that, went and changed the law internationally, and now our United States is now ignoring the law. But
they have no excuse.
Them of the law, they decided to go toward this rescheduling situation. And as of today, our friend Doug McVeigh actually contacted the DEA and they do have a judge in place. So there
Oh.
is, and they are still technically in the deciding factors about the rescheduling of cannabis, which isn't inevitable because the world bodies have decided it has medicinal use. The FDA has decided it has medicinal use. So basically, gentlemen, we outlasted it due to the science catching up to our anecdotal realities. And now CBD is legal worldwide, and we made the world aware of it. And Michael and I published an article on it, and nobody will publish our article on the change in the treaty, because not only are you allowed CBD, but you're allowed to grow your own medical cannabis by international law.
Wow.
Michael, would you like to expound on that?
Well, wait a minute. I mean, you see me smiling a lot because it tickles me, because I can also, while you're talking about it, see myself having conversations with Jack Hare and Captain Ed over Jack's book, and how we can, you couldn't even say the word marijuana without somebody looking at you, wrong. And we have come so far because of hardworking people like you. It just tickles the shit out of me. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so the International Narcotics Control Board said essentially three things. One was that CBD should not necessarily be seen as an extract of cannabis, and we should reinterpret the treaty in that way. And then they made a couple of comments about the industrial exemption of cannabis, which in the treaty, they talk about the seeds and leaves of cannabis as being exempt. And they now share our opinion that that's not an exhaustive list. That's just an example. It's always been just an example, but now they agree that it's just an example. And the third thing is that they have said that really they favor pharmaceutical cannabis and highly controlled cannabis, if not that. But if you have access issues, or if there's particular issues that are from the patient's perspective, that the patient should be able to legally cultivate their own cannabis for their own medical use, and that should be covered under the treaty as legal. And that's mind-blowing. But let me say one more little thing about what Etienne said. At this point, you have to understand that the cannabis movement, we're basically done at the drugs control program. We've moved over to Geneva. All our stuff is now under WIPO. I can explain what that means in a minute if you want. But at the UN, at the World Drugs Office, basically we're done. With medical cannabis is legal. Countries can decide at what level in that spectrum, from over-the-counter show ID to highly pharmaceuticalized and everything in between. They have that full range of whatever they want to do. And as far as adult rec, there's this loophole that you can drive an aircraft carrier through that is actually fully up to the governments to set up local adult rec programs that are completely legal under the treaty and not controlled by the treaty.
So are you declaring that the war on cannabis is over?
No, as a matter of fact, that's exactly my point, is that I want to reiterate what Etienne is talking about. And I just wanted to give you the reason why we're still there is not for our own personal shit, because what I just described is our own personal shit. We've succeeded on our own personal shit, but it's not about us. It's about the entire world. And the treaty itself is written on cannabis. It's written on three plants: coca, cannabis, and poppy. What they're called the pillar drugs, literally like Roman pillars holding up the treaty, or these three plants. The entire treaty is based on three plants. It's wrong. A drug control program should never be based on plants. It should be based on these scientific things they created in the lab that they didn't want to get out. That was actually what was in their head when they created the treaty. They weren't talking about being the fucking world plant police. So we got to get them out of that game, and the only way we're going to do it is rewrite the treaty. And this year we actually saw the first signs of not underground, but an undercurrent, let's say, of discussion at the highest levels inside the world body, all these countries talking about what comes next and how they're going to have to rewrite the treaty. That's what I think we're rolling up our sleeves for, and we're getting ready to do. And when cannabis is removed from the treaty, then it will undermine those countries like Indonesia, Nigeria, or wherever they want to still execute people. Singapore, they give people lashes for just possession, in the public square. So
and your comment about policing a plant, I know that's exactly how the law enforcement against prohibition feels. that you should not be using law enforcement in a situation that's a plant-based problem. I'm going to say horticulture, but I'm not going to say it right.
Law Enforcement Action Partnerships co-sponsored our event. You know, that's how they felt about it. So
exactly.
You know,
so you're right. You shouldn't be having the police. I mean, I would be frustrated as a police officer after getting all excited about going out and arresting rapists and murderers and killers and all that, and they want me to go and check a plant. Check a plant? Are you kidding?
Let me change the subject a little, guys. A little. Veterans, you know, everybody here on the screen except Al Graham is a vet. Michael was in the Air Force, and Etienne Army, and Casper Army, and I was Navy. So we're veterans here. We think about us. So I just wanted to point out when one of you guys was saying, hey, all kinds of people have declared cannabis a medicine, let us not forget that our own Veterans Health Administration, thanks to Veterans Medical Cannabis Access and mainly Mike Krawitz, got the VHA to say in writing to a letter sent to the VMCA, cannabis is a medicine, and the medical people of the VHA shall treat it as such. And that was going on 16 years ago. We did that, right, Mike? So,
well, and that was the first time I met Mike. Mike came on Chris Conrad told me I got to have this hardworking activist named Michael Krawitz on this show. And I reached out to him, and he was very enthusiastic about joining the program and sharing with the audience what he had done. And that's exactly when I first met Michael, when he had finished that accomplishment. And I've been saluting you ever since, Michael. That was a lot of hard work on your behalf.
Yeah, so 16 years ago, that got done.
Would that be Directive 1315?
Correct.
There you go.
Okay. All right.
And I in my book, I mean, pull my book out again, but there's a whole chapter on this whole process of how did this all go down anyway and who did it. But the point is, the executive branch of the United States government 16 years ago in writing said cannabis is a medicine. You know, I don't know what more you need. That's your own friggin' government. Now, the other thing that I'll bring up, and I want to ask a question to these guys, back when I was very active with VAC, we sent a Freedom of Information Act request to the VHA and said, this a couple of years ago, we said, hey, it's been whatever the hell it was, 13, 14 years now, and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of vets, millions of vet visits to doctors using cannabis. What happened? And they didn't know. Is there any update on that?
Yes, they did know. And well, they know and they played dumb at the same time. We're going to write a series of articles. We did a FOIA request and got 14, almost 1,500 pages. We basically asked, because of this Directive 1315, we wanted to know if the VA was actually educating their doctors, nurses, healthcare workers about Directive 1315. And it turns out they are. And that's one of the things we found out through our data dump, is because we got all kind of research. And one of the things almost every outreach to the VA around it brought forward was Directive 1315, because it allows you to discuss medical marijuana with your doctor without losing your benefits. Now, it doesn't mean they won't alter your pain management or things like that. You know, right. That has been done depending on. And what we have unfortunately seen is a treatment by geography, depending on the VA facility and depending on where that VA facility is. I'm in the Bay Area, so I go to San Francisco or Oakland, and I have a very progressive VAs. And they have no problem in actually document my medical use. Whereas one of the things we uncovered through our FOIA request is that anybody who has a positive urinalysis for THC is being posted under cannabis use disorder.
Being cannabis use disorder?
Yes. Cannabis use disorder came about in about 2013 originally through DSM-5, and then 2 years later in the DSM-10 that comes out for the VA. And basically, they combined a cannabis abuse and cannabis disorder, or in a cannabis use disorder, randomly. No really explanation of why. So one of the things we did uncover is that there was a study from 2004 to 2014 about the sudden onset of cannabis use disorder. And we were like, well, wait a second. If it wasn't coined as a phrase until 2013, why is the VA doing a study on cannabis use disorder going back to 2005? And what we found is they're just playing around with words, and now they're using these same semantics. We found that a lot of these same doctors out of these same VAs have been pooling together and just coming out with some random stuff, sometimes metadata analysis, sometimes actual analysis. But for the most part, we found that they all were only using and going back to stop research on cannabis was one study. And it was a metadata study.
Wow.
And so these are the things that we found through that FOIA request, Al, that we're still kind of piecing together, because we found that the numbers, as well as their breakdown, that they decided they're not consulting any of these veterans. If you just have a positive review analysis for THC, you're automatically smacked with CUD. So we're we're actually working with the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, who is a large veterans group. And one of the things they tasked us with is we created a veterans list, of which you guys are, I think everybody here is on that list, actually, of veterans who actually contributed to, medical cannabis reform.
A good list.
Yes. It's called, we call it Master Cannabis list here. I'll put this in the chat too, so you can see it.
I hope I haven't been overlooked. I hope I am on that list.
You are on that list, Casper, as well as Al, Byrne, as well as Mike Krawitz, as well as myself. We were nominated by other people for the actions that we did. But well, the other thing that the IAVA tasked us with was to find out this information about cannabis use disorder, because what we're going to do now is educate them so that they can now educate their base of veterans about what cannabis use disorder is, why it's being applied, and then also how to see if it is in your VA file and how to get it removed. So they actually want to go that direction. So we're working with IAVA on accomplishing that as well. So that all came, Al, out of that series of FOIA requests. And we still have to write the articles on it, but at the same time, we've been so busy doing our other things, going to the UN, and
well, no, I'm still baffled
with that article, because
for this,
like we said when we. Wait a minute. Let me finish up with Etienne on this. I'll help you with that article, because remember when we started that project, whenever the hell it was, 3 or 4 years ago. The comments we all agreed to was, we're either going to find out that they actually did something and we can learn that, or we're going to find out that they didn't do anything. And if that's the case, they're subject to screwing up the easiest, longest lasting cannabis study in the history of the world. But either way, it seems to me that the article you guys, I hope you're thinking about writing, is very negative to the idea of here's where's easy research not done.
Well, we were going to do a series of articles. The first article was going to actually praise them for educating the doctors and nurses about the Directive 1315. So that's where we started. But of course, then the next 9 articles were all going to be negative, because that's what we have. Okay. We have 10 articles altogether. They get one positive one, which is going to be our softball of love. And Michael will kind of tell, the next 9 are not so favorable to them.
Okay.
Now, because we have to point out what cannabis use disorder is, why does it matter to the veteran, and why you need to know about it. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so that's an educational campaign.
One thing I don't like right away is
to smoke cannabis.
Wait a minute. This word disorder, in a medical dictionary, you're born with a disorder. It's like post-traumatic stress disorder. There's no such thing. They might have post-traumatic stress syndrome, but you can't get born with this. So right
It's
away,
more
I
of an
don't know.
illness. We like PTSI.
Well, whatever, but it's not a disorder. And it's the same thing with, they're just making this shit up. I guess it's easier to make it up than actually have to base what you're doing on reality. Huh?
And if we're going to continue to go along with what they're making up, and that's what we're confronting is what they've made up, and to say, no, that you're wrong. Here's why you're wrong. And here's why it matters. Here's why you need to know about it. And so, again, this is part of one of those, many different things we've come across that, that we work on together. So this is the things that we work on in the Veterans Action Council. We're a working group. So we have no dues. We have no hierarchy. We have no headquarters. We just meet regularly online and help each other. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can reach out to us at veteransactioncouncil@gmail.com. We are across on the socials. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're also on Blue Sky, as well as on LinkedIn, because we get veterans
You're on Blue
outreach.
Sky?
Yeah, we're all over. We're everywhere where our veterans are.
Yeah, and the collection of veterans, by the way, to those that don't know, we're all over the place. And a number of these guys over the years have been from somewhere else. We had a couple of guys in on Ukraine, and we've talked to people from, I think, Australia. And
we're an international group, so we accept and work with international veterans and have assisted veterans like our friends in Australia and other countries in their cannabis program. Michael and I both assisted Ukraine in their medical cannabis laws when they reached out to us when we were at the UN. Last year, we had 4 different representatives reach out to us from their country, and we worked directly with them on providing them with laws. And then when they passed it, they did not initially pass PTSD. So then we worked alongside others and helped them bring PTSD along into their medical cannabis laws. So our effect is also international, just because, a lot of our politicians, even around the world, they don't want to have to create something out of the air. So if you can actually take pre-existing legislation and get it in their hands, they can then craft it in their words and in their situation, and that they can build it through their laws. So this is also where we have found ourselves being just a simple bridge of communication by providing accesses to laws that we know and are educated about. And then when they get educated about it, they're able to then adapt it to their country so that they can now have those laws. And that's beautiful and humbling to watch and be a part of.
Well, gentlemen, we are down to the end of the hour, and it would be a groovy time for you to put a spotlight on websites and hardworking activists and make a last comment to our audience. We'll start with who's been quiet here for a minute, Michael Krawitz.
Yeah, I'll leave it up to Etienne to give you websites or whatever, but I just want to say that we'd be happy for now if the Veterans Affairs would just follow the actual rules in the medical books about how to diagnose cannabis use disorder. If someone just drug positive, has a positive drug test, that should not be in any universe the cause for an immediate label of a diagnosed disorder. That there is quite a bit of, even as weak as the DSM is on cannabis, it still has multiple criteria for the label of cannabis use disorder. So if we could start there, and that's what we presented to the IAVA is, we don't necessarily have to fight the big battle of the diagnosis itself and the DSM. We could just start out with best practice of not fucking over the people that you're mislabeling and misdiagnosing. So having said that, much love to you all, and appreciate your interest. And Al, man, it's great to see you. Casper, everybody, Graham, nice to see you. It's been too long, man, and hope all is well in your world and continues to be.
And ATM?
Well, you can reach us, as I said, at veteransactioncouncil.com, veteransactioncouncil@gmail.com. If you want to join us for our Zoom calls, we're happy to email you the information for our Zoom, because that's where we meet. We meet on Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then 2:30 on Wednesdays each week as a working group. Every other Thursday night, we have an 8 p.m. meeting at East Coast time. And then every other Friday, we do roundtables, which we've had y'all on.
Wow.
And of course, PACE puts out so that we use our roundtables to educate our veterans as well as to make them aware of the amazing and awesome people we've worked alongside of over the decades and highlight them because they're special people to us. And our veterans are new, or veterans come to new to us all the time. So these are great tools for them to educate as well as to catch up, because we include all of our veterans in our discussions. They ask the questions, we craft the questions together, and we work together as a team. So it's a team effort to make it happen. So I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you, Casper, Leitch, Byrne, Al Graham, and of course, my venerable partner in crime at the VAC, Michael Krawitz.
And Al Graham, you're busy up there in Canada telling the world how important it is to get involved in the cannabis movement. Why don't you give us another shout out about what's going on up there?
Yes, I am. I'm up here educating people about cannabis as well as psychedelics. And we're doing interviews with patients as well as advocates. And we're spreading the news around. And I'm going to let everybody know, as Etienne says, that you can catch the VAC roundtables, the Veteran Action Council roundtables, every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on the Pace Radio Network, found at paceradio.net.
Nice, nice. And Albert, if I want to buy a copy of your book, where do I go to make that happen? Albert, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was trying to be quiet. I guess I succeeded. Yeah, anywhere they sell books, Amazon Books, Apple Books, anything online, and hopefully in your bookstore. I've actually had a number of people lately say, hey, I suggested to my librarian they pick up this book, and apparently I can see that there's some sales in there. So yeah, ask your library to stock the book. It's these guys are all mentioned in it basically, and anyway, so thank you for coming to Time for Hemp. Thank you for being VAC. You guys are terrific. You know that. I loved working with you more than I do now, but we're still in the same team. Don't worry about that. And again, thanks to our audience for paying attention. And if you can, give everybody some help any way you can.
And it is true. We are a team. We are a team here. In fact, it's because of my team that I'm still here. Al Byrne and Al Graham actually convinced me to put the mic back on and get in front of the camera and start doing more interviews quite a while back, or I wouldn't even be bothering doing this, but they are an inspiration to me. And I can certainly tell you, I count myself blessed to have them in my path. I've also met so many wonderful people in the cannabis movement that I have to say the cannabis movement is my family. And I feel so much joy every time I hang out with everybody who's working hard to let the whole world know just how important it is to take time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Well, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp. Throughout Earth's history, hemp has been used, no mystery. Hemp was legal to pay your taxes for more than a century. check your facts. The founding fathers make sense to me. It's time to grow hemp legally. Think of all its uses. It's money that's well spent. Right now, no excuses. It's time for hemp. Sustainable green industry, that's our intent. A better place this world will be. It's time for hemp. Fuel and food and clothes and soap, housing, cars, yeah, cars, no joke. Henry Ford built a car of hemp. It's time for us to do it again. People be employed with balanced farming as it's meant. Right now, it's time for hemp. Hemp is a true necessity for the wealth and protection of this country. These are words of Jefferson Thomas. He grew hemp, why not us? It's time to lift the hemp band. It's time to lift the hemp band. Yep, we can. I know we can make a difference. Yes, we can. Yes, I know we can. And we can work together and lift the hemp band. Look at all that money. Yeah, the money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp.